and we are back with another episode of Diffusion podcast. Today we have Thaís Consiglio, previous CEO of ASAAS, and also legal and operations, leading one of the most innovative businesses in Brazil when it comes to Fintech and simplified operation for business. Thaís, welcome, and feel free to introduce yourself.
Hello, Ricardo. Thanks for having me. I am really excited to be here today and to share a bit about my journey and maybe the future of law and technology. I truly appreciate your invitation.
Thaís, I'd like to thank you as well, first, for joining us on To the Commons. I think the most important thing that I would like to hear from you in this talk is about fintechs. I know you have deep expertise on that field. So thinking about a little bit about ASAAS, would you like to go a bit back in time and explain how was your experience there?
Yes, of course. So first, I think it's nice to introduce myself. So my name is Thaís, and I'm from Brazil, and I am graduated in law. So yes, I am a lawyer in the tech world. So I started my career work in traditional environments, and including with judges and prosecutors. But in 2017, I discovered the world of startups, especially fintechs, and then since then, I am fascinated by it. But I joined in a Brazilian fintech in 2017, and this fintech that you told, ASAAS, and we tried to change or reshape our financial system. So I did that for the last 8 years, and I really like this kind of vision of business and technology. So I can explain more about the fintechs, but I think this is important to say that I am a lawyer first, because I work a lot with regulation.
Yeah, I think that's really important when it comes to new businesses. Most people never realize like how difficult it is to operate in Brazil and be innovative. So I know like your business ASAAS was very successful in bringing innovation to the scenario, and of course that involved law as well. So if you wanna explore a little about that more.
Yes. So here in Brazil, it's important to say that we didn't have an innovative financial system. Last year, 10 years ago, or more maybe, we just had some big banks that provided access to credit, bank accounts, or payments service to the population. So it was very different than nowadays. And here in Brazil, our financial system is regulated by an authority we call Brazilian Central Bank. And for a long time, it was very difficult for new types of companies or institutions to enter in this financial market here in Brazil. At the same time, we know that with internet and new technologies, new types of business and startups start to be how can I say, to born, I don't know if this is the right word, but it starts to appear in the system. And the vision is that with the rise of internet and new technologies, we start to see some change of the consumer's perspectives, and how people want the things faster, maybe more accessible, and included this in the financial service. So if you look to Brazil 10 years ago, which was very complicated, and we couldn't see any improvements in the financial system. But if we look at the world, for example, especially United States, we could see some new kinds of companies that we call fintechs emerging. A good example, in my opinion, is PayPal. It's a famous company, and it was included by Elon Musk, that he's very famous right now. And other company in the United States that I can tell is Intuit, that is very famous too. So we could see that some new kinds of companies that work in the financial systems start to emerge in other countries. But in Brazil, we couldn't see that in the beginning. But we have a nice example here in Brazil, a company called Nubank. I think this company is very famous. Nowadays, they operate in Colombia and Mexico too. So they are very big now. But companies like that start to be created to change, especially the consumer perspective or consumer experience in the financial system. So we could see that in Brazil, some companies start to, arise maybe, and to provide better financial service. But at the same time, the regulation in Brazil was very conservative. So it was a difficult period because we needed a change in our regulation or in our laws to permit new kinds of business. So in 2014, Brazilian Central Bank started to change the regulation environment, and then we could create space to new kinds of companies and institutions to offer payments, credit, or banks accounts or payments accounts to Brazilian customers. So it was the beginning of fintechs here.
Well, that was an amazing journey, and although I was never directly involved with the rise of fintechs in Brazil, even working with Binance, I got exposed to a lot of different business innovating in the fintech scenario in Brazil, and I noticed that a lot of them, they had to be very creative when it comes to the legal landscape in Brazil. And I'm very happy that Brazil was kind of we can say Brazil is a leader in fintech innovation. Last years, of course, when it comes to an industry, Brazil still are taking baby steps, but I think fintech is one of those that we kind of excel. In that sense, you know yourself, so you joined us at Tools for the Commons, and we are coming with the proposal of having developed digital economic zone. So we're merging the digital infra when it comes to blockchain and decentralized ledgers, but also with new legal frameworks for governance on the digital era. And that sense, I'd like to ask you, when you think about going a bit beyond fintech, because Brazil, as we mentioned, has been having this wave of unicorns and startups and now big businesses in fintech. But going above fintech, what are the areas that you see potential for growth, and what else Brazil can develop when it comes to new businesses around the same segment?
Yes, so I have my experience, especially related with fintechs, and it's nice to see the improvement of the regulation and the improvement of the financial service. So now we are talking about DREX and Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies. And imagine 10 years ago, maybe we couldn't talk about it. So it's nice to see the evolution of the financial system, but it's not just in the financial system. So I'm very happy to say that I am enjoying Tools for the Commons, especially because we could create the new types of governance or societies for the future, as in the same way that we did in the financial system. So what can I say that we have a lot of organizations and a lot of service that we are used to operate in the same way for some years, and sometimes we could see how we can change this kind of service companies or institutions, especially when we talk about governance and cities. We are very used in the way that we are now. And I can see that new kinds of startups or new kinds of companies are emerging to help to change the world in different areas, like civic, like we call some companies as deep techs, or money, or provide better health service. So now we have more technology. We have more technology more and more in the last year. So how we can use that for better improvements for the humanity. So it's a little crazy. I don't know if I answer your question, but I can see a lot of opportunities for us, especially with artificial intelligence and with the development of internet and technologies in general.
Yeah, I think we're living through a new industrial revolution, and with that comes a lot of new technology that we call emerging technology. So just to name a few, blockchain is one of them. Of course, most people will probably refer to it as a crypto, but crypto is just, how can I say, you're kind of referring to cryptography. So it's not an actual technology. The technology itself is blockchain. And what blockchain does is to provide a new layer of safety when it comes to the internet. A lot of things that we do on the internet today is not scalable just because we don't have, first, the transparency of what is being done there. We don't also have encryption mechanisms and also integration with smart contracts that actually automate a lot of things when it comes to data systems. So blockchain has been growing in the industry with different applications, not just financials. Most people, they probably think, okay, when you think about blockchain, you're thinking about money. Not exactly. Blockchain can actually be used as a ledger. Yeah. So in that sense, some people are using for logistics, supply chain, actually using smart contracts to automate internal processes. Of course, tokenization has been a big case when it comes to blockchain, but I foresee this being applied in large scale, especially on internet businesses. And of course, that requires new legislations. I'd probably like to hear from you, because Brazil, it's a kind of country that politics are kind of complex and all, and we know for us to change anything at all when it comes to legislation, we have to play with politics and all. So if you want to probably touch point, what is the most difficult aspect to kind of improve the law in Brazil, and how do you see a most effective way to do that?
Yes, this is a very nice question. So I like to say that I'm a lawyer because it's not so common for us lawyers to receive new technologies or new things as good in the first moments. We are traditionally more conservative, so it's very different for us. And this is not just related with lawyers. The legal system in Brazil is more conservative, and it's difficult to change in a faster way. So this means that the legal system and the law are always late, and even we try to be faster, it's complicated. So in Brazil, I can see that we have some kinds of new laws that try to help the innovation here. For example, we have Marco Civil da Internet. It's a legal framework to regulate internet in Brazil that it's important for us. We have some kind of laws related with protection of data. We have some projects related with artificial intelligence. But to be honest, I think the law or the regulation, it is not the correct or the right way to discipline new technologies, because technologies are so much faster than we could understand. They change a lot. So in my opinion, we could change the mindset here and not depends of regulation to discipline everything, but just work with principles or with the already existing laws. I think it will be better because it's impossible to follow all the rules and to understand all the rules at the same time. And this is very complicated for innovative institutions or for new technologies. So I don't have a solution for that. It's a change of mindset to regulate less and maybe regulate with principles or trying not to be taxative related with everything, especially new technologies. And to be honest, our judiciary and legislation and executive could be different, but it's a political situation, so it's not so easy to change. And I think that it's important to say, to talk a little about lawyers too, because in Brazil, we have a lot of lawyers. So I don't know, maybe, I don't know how much we have nowadays, but it's a lot. And we, as lawyers or counselors, we need to change a little our perspectives to be more innovative, to try to understand the new types of consumers, the new type of societies, trying to improve the ways of tax or civic laws. So I think the society will not be always the same, and lawyers could help the society to create the new regulations, new laws, or new interactions in the future. So I think it's a provocative question or provocative point for the lawyers too.
Well, that's a very good reflection, and I probably didn't talk about this before, but I started my studies in law in Brazil before I left Brazil and went to study and work abroad. But yeah, one thing
I didn't know about that.
Yeah. I haven't found out. I come from a lawyer's family, so yeah, like one of the things that I quickly noticed was like, wow, we're gonna have like tons of lawyers next year. And I'm not sure is that a good thing though, because I feel like the future is converging into technology, and I could foresee that like the good lawyers, they will start to happily around technology. But still, especially in Brazil, that has a very, let's say, ideological kind of issue when it comes to technology. It's just a small group of people that are very inclined to like be innovative when it comes to legislation. I think there is also a generational matter as well, because we know if you're talking about blockchain especially, there is something in Brazil that is called cartório, which is notary, and most people don't realize, but this is something that comes like from ages. Brazil has been, well, it's mostly Catholic foundation, yeah, and Catholicism is Romanism, and the system that we have in cartórios is something that comes from the Sistema Notarial, so the notarial system that comes from Roman. So like that's crazy, isn't it? Because the entrenched interest that has a relation with that comes from centuries. And how do you change something that is like so entrenched in society? I feel like the only way we can push this forward is not fighting against, but always becoming more innovative. So Brazilians have something like kind of like embedded in their own blood when it comes to innovation, because there's so much obstacles that the only way you can thrive in Brazil is to find new ways to do stuff. So I think one of the things we could probably talk about, like the scenario of open business in Brazil, a startup, and even raising capital, and it wasn't easy. So nowadays, a lot of companies, they are in Delaware because it's much easier to do this with a corporation outside Brazil. And what we're doing as well for the Commons is to come with digital economic zones that kind of provide like what Delaware provides, but on steroids, which means connection with crypto rails, facilitating decentralized finance integration. So if you can probably explore a little bit of like, as Delaware is not something like, okay, for some people that I talk about and are not familiar with startups, they're like, okay, what is Delaware? But I'm sure you know. and we can talk about what is the future of Delaware. How can we have new types of Delaware, and how can I say, how can we benefit from having more flexible regulations?
Yes, of course. So I consider myself very lucky because I had the opportunity to be a lawyer in a startup, and I could see the Delaware and Cayman sandwich in person, let's say like that. And I could work with a lot of startups, especially here in Brazil, that they have a lot of questions or doubts related. And I don't know if in the future will be like that. I hope no. And we are working for that right week. But let me explain. In Brazil and other countries too, new startups start to be built in the last years, and then we start to find a new way to operate the governance and the rights of these kinds of startups in an international way. So, for example, we talked about that before, but here in Brazil, the regulation is very conservative, and it's not so easy to understand our regulations, even for us as Brazilians. Imagine for an foreigner investor. So it's complicated. So we have this thesis about international investments, and one way to do that is to create offshore or a company in other country, could be Delaware, could be Cayman, and to operate there the governance part, especially related with shareholders and related with rights for agreements and rights for the startup to operate it. So it was a very common way to create governance in Brazil and in other countries too. And a lot of startups decided to change their how can I say that, their cap table for a Delaware or a Cayman company to be easier to transaction with other companies, other countries, and to create new rights and to exclude rights too. So, but it's not very functional at the same time because involve costs, involve lawyers, involve accountability. So it's very complicated for a small company or a small startup to have this kind of governance in other countries, especially because of the bureaucracy related. So in the future, I hope that we could change and not be related so much, the company be related so much with the country that she born or the company born. But otherwise, we could create solutions for these kinds of companies to operate in a lot of countries and to have their governance easy and to provide their service without so much bureaucracy and they can the companies can create their own environment using internet for that. So I know that you know a lot about it, but Cayman Delaware is something that it's very useful now, but of course we have a lot of perspectives or a lot of opportunities to create something better related with technologies in the future.
Yeah, well, it's kind of interesting because we are talking about this like very naturally, but we know for a fact, me personally, I know for a fact that if I speak about, if I name the word Cayman to people will instantly call it, like, let's say in the best case scenario, they'll call it offshore or even worse words, but that's because they don't understand why do we have to use Cayman Islands when it comes to creating new business in Brazil and remain competitive? Because nothing would have happened if you actually play by the status quo in Brazil and you don't come, of course, like always, like being compliant, but if you're not creative, like nothing will change. It's a country with a lot of code structures that come from Rome, So I like to emphasize that so people understand, like, what is this coming from? This is not something about Brazilians. So who are Brazilians? Where our culture come from? I think it's important to understand the ties with the church as well. So it's very rigid structure that you have to be innovative and come with our solution. That sometimes you're merging stuff, like you're combining Delaware and Cayman to come up with something in between, which is like okay, but it's not the final solution. It's a workaround. And when it comes to the digital economic zones that we're coming up with, that's something, because the idea is to provide you with personalized, customized jurisdictions that have different specifications for your own needs. So in that sense, it will be a much more modular layer that you can have different, you can either operate on common law, you can also build your own specifications as a business that you of needs of a jurisdiction that you need for your businesses. So in that sense, I feel like the future of the, let's say, jurisdictions will be something that you plug and play. So I need this set of laws, and I'll be operating that set of laws. So that's something that I believe that we can do with the internet, and we already have happening in places like Prospero. So they have a very easy-to-use interface that you can pick, like what kind of like jurisdiction legislation you would like to have, and you can pick from a few options, and then you integrate that with blockchain as well. So you unlock, most people don't realize, but more than talking about blockchain, talking about decentralized finance is really important, because decentralized finance, of course, is much centered in Ethereum, which is a public blockchain. Yeah, in that sense, you have protocols being built there, and of course, a lot of protocols are already behaving as venture capitals and funds. So you have locked money in there, but the future is already looking like Ethereum can cross-communicate with Solana and Polkadot and other blockchains emerging. So what does that really mean is that we're unlocking a new trail for capital through crypto. And the money, when it comes to decentralized finance, moves much more faster than it actually happens today. So you can probably explore that topic just for us to close this episode, but we had the PIX, and we're also moving towards REX, but it's still, we don't have a system that today, if I want to send money to, I don't know, my cousin in Portugal, I can do that with the tap of a button. With decentralized finance, you can do that today. Of course, not using the legacy system, let's say fiat currencies, but the logic that we have today in DeFi, if brought the legacy systems, brings a new whole level of interoperability and between financial systems. So in that sense, blockchain is much more than just technology. I think it's about open banking as well. Open banking, like transitioning to decentralized finance. So just for us to wrap up this episode, and if you want to close up with that remark on the innovations that we had on PIX, and now we're coming with REX, which is a CBDC, which is also a very sensitive topic for a lot of people. But what are your remarks on this evolution?
So I was working in the financial system when we started to talk about PIX, and at that time it was very innovative. So it was something that we couldn't understand so much at the time, but we could see, I talked before about Nubank. Nubank had a system, it's not like PIX because they could do transactions 24 hours a day for Nubank accounts. So the innovation was emerging in the same way, but in this case, Brazilian central bank started to create the regulation, and the PIX in Brazil is very successful nowadays. So it's a nice kind of technology, and I think that it was something initial, because I totally agree with you. It's just the beginning, because we don't have solutions, or we don't have until nowadays ways to transfer or to deal with money across countries in a nice way, or with a tax situation that it's easy for consumers And for people especially that don't have access to other kinds of bank accounts, or they have just traditional, it's not so easy to operate. So Pix is a nice innovative system. I think it's very nice here in Brazil. And open finance is something very innovative too, but for me, the problem or the situation is that Brazilian Central Bank is creating and operating the system. And I think that we have a lot of space for companies to create the new kinds of innovations related with the financial system, not just the regulators doing that. So related with DeFi and other kinds of perspectives, I think this is not the future. This is happening now. And probably for us, we could expect a lot of changes in our in the financial service in the next years, but not just in financial, because as you told us before, the new technologies are not related just with one question or one point. For example, financial, we could use for a lot of things, for example, governance, and for example, better legal systems. So I am very happy to follow these new kinds of technologies, and I am expecting nice things for the next years.
Amazing. Yeah. We were in the stage in the market now that we are moving towards stable coins and payments. Mainly, like when we talk about stable coins, we're mainly talking about cross-border payments. And in that sense, I think, especially when it comes to we're building tools for commons and digital economic zone, that has a huge direction with that. So we, like from my understanding, we will be moving forward with finance becoming more integrated with governance as well. So that's something we can foresee, and with all the insights that you provided us with, we can probably understand as well what we will face and we'll have to do when it comes to surpassing obstacles in Brazil. Anyway, Thaís, thank you so much for your participation. It was amazing having you here. Also glad to have you on Tools for the Commons. You're being an amazing asset so far. I'll probably leave you just a few minutes so you can do your own pitch for your own personal projects, what you envision for the future, and then we can wrap it up this episode.
Okay, Rick, thanks for having me. It was a nice conversation. So about me, I think I talked a lot today, but if you want to connect it with me, you can follow me on social media. And I am very enthusiastic about legal frameworks, about technologies, and about the future of civilizations. So I am always learning a lot, and I am very happy to be here in your podcast. Thank you for the invitation.
Thank you, Thaís. Well, guys, this was it for today. We're wrapping up one more episode for the Diffusion podcast, and we'll be back on next week.